Scared? A little bit. Shocked? Definitely. Surprised? Maybe even a little terrorized. All of these things are part of the everyday life that we live in our three-dimensional world. It's that moment when I'm walking through the woods and I see a snake and I make that crazy inaudible scream and I jump and my husband's like, snake? Yes, it was a snake. So this is one of those times when you have one of those knee-jerk reactions to something very scary happening and you're just not sure what to do. It's fight, flight, or freeze. We all have it in us. We just don't always have any control over it. So when we talk about fight, flight, or freeze, I think about it in the three-dimensional sense. A two-dimensional sense of fight, flight, or freeze is perhaps watching a television program, a scary movie, a horror movie, and something flashes across the screen and you jump really quick. Or maybe watching that war movie that seems so real that you can almost imagine being there. But it's two-dimensional. You can't smell what it's like to be there. You can't touch anything in that scene. You can't taste anything that's there. And you can barely hear what's going on because some brilliant director has decided to put this music to it that encourages you how to feel in that position, in that situation. So somebody's telling you what to do. Somebody's kind of manipulating you on how to feel in the two-dimensional sense. So when I think about fight, flight, or freeze, I have three different scenarios that I'd like to present. So the first scenario is there were three friends, and they were out snowmobiling. We do that a lot around here, right? We have a lot of snow. We still have a lot of snow. So while they were out in the trails, they were out in the middle of the woods, and they stopped and they were talking, and then the two friends were looking over here, and over here the third friend had collapsed and they were on the ground. And so the two friends are looking at each other and they look back and they look at each other and they look back and they're like, is he playing? What's going on? What do we do? Well, one of the friends is a trained first responder and the other friend is really fast on their snowmobile. So it seemed like it was minutes, but what it really was a few seconds. And that trained first responder, just like a CPR video that you would have, anybody has CPR training? So that CPR video, what's the first thing you do? Call 911. So that's what they did. They got on their snowmobile and they ran out and they called 911. And so the trained first responder got down and they assessed the situation and they're looking at the person. They're like, okay, are you okay? Are you okay? No signs of life. Okay, start compressions. And that's what they did. Nothing else was going on but compressions. They were just trying to keep the blood pumping through the system. And they didn't even realize 45 minutes had passed before emergency services showed up to take over. The second scenario was a military service member. So the military service member is in the Middle East, and then all of a sudden the overhead sirens go off on the base. And that means take cover, get to your stations. So instead of that military person doing exactly what they'd been trained to do, they ran. They just started running. They had no idea where they were going. They just ran. They were supposed to go 5 feet over here, get ready to fight whatever was coming, but instead they ran. And it was meters and meters and meters, and somebody grabbed the person and pulled them in, and they're like, what are you doing? You were supposed to go here. And they can't hear because all the blood's rushing through their ears, and they don't know what's going on. They have no idea why they ran. They just ran. And then the third scenario was a waitress. And so the waitress was working in a nightclub. And she sees somebody come in from her day job because, the day job didn't pay much, so she had to have this second job. And so this person comes in and she knows them, and through the course of the evening, the person appears to be getting more and more intoxicated. And so she's like, well, I'm gonna offer to give this guy a ride home because if I don't, he gets caught drunk driving, he's gonna lose his job. So she gives him a ride home and she takes him up to his apartment, and a moment too late she realizes he was not intoxicated. And he grabbed her and he pulled her into his apartment, and she just froze as he sexually assaulted her. She didn't know what to do. She didn't know what to say. She just froze. And he said, if you tell anybody, nobody's going to believe you. Nobody's going to believe that this happened to you. There are three very clear, distinct representations of fight, flight, or freeze. Now, did people think that they wanted to respond in those ways? Probably the first responder, yes, they probably wanted to do that. They wanted to fight. The second person, did they want to run? That's not what they were trained to do. And the third person definitely did not want to just stay there and take it. They wanted to be able to do something else. So here's the kicker to all of this. All three of those situations happened to me. That's my story. Those are my stories. I was the first responder. I was a CPR and first aid instructor for Great Lakes Recovery Centers. I taught all of the people that worked for Great Lakes Recovery Centers how to do CPR and first aid. I could run an AED. I could run a scene. I could do whatever I needed to do. I have not been able to do CPR training since that day, since I spent 45 minutes on my knees doing CPR on our friend. And the worst part about all of this was our friend did not make it. He didn't survive. I was a service member. I was stationed in Saudi Arabia. I was there for several months, and that was probably one of the scariest times in my life because of this abandoned package that caused this base-wide panic, that caused the alarm to go off, that caused me to run because I wasn't trained to run. I was trained to stand and fight. But all I could think is, I've got to get out of here. I've got a 3-year-old at home. He's going to be missing me if I don't get out of here. I've got to go. I didn't know where I was going. It's going to take a flight to get me anywhere where I needed to be off the base. But I ran instead. And my training failed me. But what I really felt was that I failed. I didn't feel like my training failed. I felt like I failed, that I was the failure. And I was the waitress. I was also in the military when this happened. And the person that assaulted me was an officer, and I was enlisted. And when he told me that nobody was going to believe that this happened to me, I believed him. I absolutely believed him. Because in 1996, why would anybody believe me? We didn't have the protections. We didn't have the ability to stand up and say the things that make it okay to say those things today, and to make it okay to call those people out today. We didn't have those things. We didn't have places then that protected people in those situations. So the only reason why I'm able to stand up here today and talk about all these things, and I'm not lying on the floor, curled up in the fetal position, terrified of all of these things that happened to me and any possible outcomes, is because of resilience. My brain is so resilient, and I don't even know why it's resilient, but I'm just grateful that it is. I am so grateful that my brain has been able to help me bounce back, that I can work with victims today, that I can work with those survivors today, and I can talk with them, and I can hear their stories, and I can share their pain with them, and it doesn't cause me nightmares at night anymore. Well, that doesn't cause me nightmares, but I still have nightmares. Just about other things like trying to run and I feel like I'm in quicksand, and you know how that goes when you have those dreams. Usually it's a big snake chasing me or a clown with a bloody knife or something, but those are different dreams. I can never have the dream where I'm winning $1 million. Those dreams those don't come to me. So anyway, my resilient brain has decided that I'm going to be okay. At the time when all of those things were happening, I couldn't tell you what happened from A to Z. There was no linear thought. I couldn't say, first this happened, then this happened, then this happened, to give anybody a clear idea. Because what was going on in my brain that was protecting me from all of the pain and the harm and the hurt and the damage that was being caused by all of these traumatic things that were happening. So what is going on in the brain when the brain is under stress? In the amygdala, that is our emergency center of the brain. That is where all of the red flags get raised, and it tells you, danger, danger, danger. You have to be alert. You need to be aware of what's going on. Now, I'm telling you these things not as a researcher, because that I am not. I am an experiencer. I am a life experiencer. But I do know that so a few years ago, Dr. Rebecca Campbell from Michigan State University, she is the researcher, and she is a professor, and she has done so much work and research on the neurobiology of trauma that she explained all of these things in such a way that I was like, oh my gosh, I did not fail. This was something that was built into me that I had no choice over. I could have fought, I could have done all of these things. I've been fighting with my brothers my whole life, and they trained me what to do if somebody tried to attack me. And all I thought was how disappointed they would be for me if I didn't fight the way that they taught me to, and that was another reason why I didn't tell. I didn't want to see the disappointment. I didn't want to see the hurt. I didn't want to see the pain on their faces because their little sister experienced something so horrific. So I pretended everything was okay. I pretended it was all right. And the hippocampus, that one is responsible for our memories, our recent memories, and where our memories live. And those memories, I can push them in the back. I can compartmentalize like no other. They live in a little box in the back of my head, and I'm okay with that. The thalamus. The thalamus is a little bit difficult for me because it does produce triggers for me sometimes. That's where our sights and our sounds are, that's where all of those things are activated. So when I see things, yeah, I get a little bit of a trigger. If I hear certain things, like a Zippo lighter flicking, that is a trigger sound for me. And so I can start a little bit, and then I do my breathing exercise of smell the soup, cool the soup. Sounds funny? Smell the soup. Cool the soup. It's a breathing exercise, helps calm me down, gets my breathing lowered. I've been doing it in the back for a little while now. And so the prefrontal cortex, this one I used to think was my enemy because the prefrontal cortex is where all of our decision-making skills live. And I was like, why aren't you working? Why are you on vacation right now? And the prefrontal cortex is actually on autopilot during those times. It's not giving you the option to make decisions on what to do. It's doing it. It's making the decision. It's not giving you the choice. So while that's all busy, that's all going on up there, the body responses are going on as well. You've got a racing heart. Yep, sure do. Blood pressure elevates, pupils dilate, allowing more light to come in. The veins constrict because all the blood needs to be in the internal organ area, protecting it. And if you felt my hands right now, you'd know that. They're cold and clammy, folks. That's real. The blood sugar increases because you are preparing for fight or flight, so it's creating energy for you. And I'm still not sure if I'm fighting or flighting right now, so you'll know if you see a Betsy-shaped hole in the door. So your muscles all tense up because you're getting ready to fight or flight. And so you're standing there, your fists are clenched and your muscles are just tight and you're ready to go. And your lungs need more and more oxygen. So the inside smooth muscles are relaxing, so it's creating room for the lungs to expand. Once the initial excitement is over, once everything calms down, once you realize that abandoned package on that military installation was actually a box of mustard that was left outside the chow hall and it wasn't going to kill anybody, then it takes about 20 minutes to several hours to bounce back. So did you know that people can live in a constant state of fight, flight, or freeze? That there are people that live like this every single day. Children living in homes with domestic violence, veterans in combat zones that have been in combat zones, people that are experiencers of disasters, people that have experienced terroristic activities, sexual assault and domestic violence victims can live with fight, flight, or freeze constantly happening every single day of their life. Unfortunately, in our country, 22 veterans, they commit suicide every single day. A lot of them are living in this fight, flight, or freeze constant every single day. Children who have the adverse childhood experiences or ACEs scores of 4 or more, and that's 4 out of 10, they're 4 times more likely to attempt suicide. And that could be anything from having violence in the home, that could be from having somebody in the home that's addicted, or having a parent that's gone to jail or prison, or having mental illness in the home. Those are just 4 of the things that are possibly what a child could score on to make it a fight, flight, or freeze absolute every single day for them. They don't know what's going to happen. And so we need to start doing things to help these children, to help them not have these adverse childhood experiences. So what I would like everybody to take away from this is that I didn't get to choose my fight, flight, or freeze responses, and people don't get to choose that and they beat themselves up over it. This is something that is an automatic. This is something that is it is an autonomic defense mechanism. It happens to everyone. I don't want people to feel like they have to beat themselves up over the woulda, coulda, shoulda. I should have said this. I would have done that. I could have done better. I knew how to fight. I was trained in the military, and I didn't respond the way that I thought I was supposed to. And for a long time, I did beat myself up. But I did some of the things that you're supposed to do to help yourself. I went to therapy. I am not ashamed to admit that. It'd be kind of hypocritical of me to do that because, I employ a counselor at Diane Pepler Resource Center. So I want to make sure that everybody understands I endorse that. I endorse therapy. I endorse self-care. We absolutely endorse coping mechanisms. Another ism. I could have done that one. Probably been happier. I don't want people to blame themselves for their response. I want people to understand that self-forgiveness is healing. That is part of the healing process, is to forgive yourself for the way you responded. Nobody reacts perfectly in every situation. We don't, and it's okay. Be kind to yourself. Give yourself the love that you need. Give yourself the care that you need, and just be okay with the fact that I'm not going to respond the way I thought I was going to every single day. Be patient with yourself and the healing process, because I'm here to tell you that all of those things, well, except for the snowmobile thing, those happened over 20 years ago. And I still have issues on occasion, and I don't beat myself up over it. And love yourself, flaws and all, because the one thing we know is that you never know how you are going to respond to any of these situations until it does happen to you. My name is Betsy Huggett. Thank you for listening.